Commander Thexfell of the Vorthak could not stop thinking about the human maintenance worker. Something about Jake Morrison bothered him in a way he could not explain. The man had moved too quickly, worked too efficiently, and shown no fear when faced with three of the most powerful beings in the local Confederation government. After the inspection tour ended, Thexfell returned to his ship and accessed the Confederation database. He typed in Jake Morrison's name and waited for the results. What he found made his yellow eyes narrow with suspicion. Jake Morrison's official records began only 4 years ago, when he applied for work on Kepler-7. Before that, there was nothing. No birth records, no school records, no previous jobs, nothing. The commander's military training told him that people did not just appear from nowhere. Someone had erased Jake Morrison's past, and in Thexfell's experience, that usually meant the person was either a criminal or a spy. Either way, they were dangerous. Dr. Zikmoth of the Jektar was having similar thoughts aboard his research vessel. While Thexfell focused on official records, the insectoid scientist was more interested in biological data. During their brief encounter, he had used hidden scanners to analyze Jake's physical condition. The results confused him. The human showed muscle development patterns that suggested extensive combat training. His reaction times were faster than normal humans, and his body showed trace amounts of chemicals that were not found in natural biology. Most interesting of all, Jake's DNA contained markers that looked like they had been artificially modified. Dr. Zikmoth clicked his mandibles together as he studied the data. Humans were not supposed to have this kind of technology. According to Confederation intelligence, Earth's military was decades behind other races in genetic enhancement. Yet this simple maintenance worker showed clear signs of advanced biological modification. Seer Yathara of the Nixani had tried a different approach. When Jake was focused on his repair work, she had attempted to scan his surface thoughts. What she found disturbed her more than the others' discoveries. Jake's mind was protected by barriers that felt both human and something else entirely. When she pushed harder, trying to see past his mental defenses, she caught brief flashes of memories that made no sense. Images of battles in space, weapons she did not recognize, and most troubling of all, a symbol that looked like a three-headed dog. The memory came with a designation, Project Cerberus. But when she tried to see more, Jake's mental barriers had pushed back with force that left her with a headache. In all her years of psychic training, she had never encountered a human mind that could resist her abilities so effectively. The three alien leaders met secretly in Thexfell's quarters that evening. They shared their findings and reached the same conclusion. Jake Morrison was not what he appeared to be. He was almost certainly a former military operative from one of Earth's secret programs, possibly placed on Kepler-7 to spy on Confederation activities in this sector. "We cannot allow this to continue," Thexfell said, pacing back and forth like a caged predator. "If Earth has operatives this far into Confederation space, it means they are planning something." Dr. Zikmoth nodded his insectoid head. "The biological modifications I detected are beyond anything Earth has publicly demonstrated. This suggests they have secret military technology that could threaten our expansion plans." Seer Yathara sat quietly for a moment, still nursing her psychic headache. "The memories I glimpsed showed combat experience that spans years, possibly decades. This Jake Morrison is not just a spy, he is a weapon." The three aliens looked at each other and came to an unspoken agreement. Jake Morrison had to be eliminated before he could report back to Earth or cause problems for their operations. But they had to be careful. Killing a human civilian would create diplomatic complications with Earth's government. "We need to make it look like an accident," Thexfell said finally. "Industrial accidents happen all the time on mining stations." Dr. Zikmoth's compound eyes glittered with cold intelligence. "I can sabotage the mining equipment in a way that appears to be human negligence. A cascade failure during the night shift would eliminate Morrison, while making it seem like poor maintenance caused the disaster. I can manipulate the station's computer systems to hide our involvement," Seer Yathara added. "The investigation will show human error, nothing more." They spent the next hour planning Jake Morrison's death. Thexfell would use his military access codes to disable safety systems at key moments. Dr. Zikmoth would introduce subtle flaws into the mining equipment that would cause catastrophic failures. Seer Yathara would ensure that the station's sensors and recording systems would show false data during the incident. The plan was simple and effective. During the next night shift, When most of the station's population was asleep, the mining complex would suffer a series of equipment failures. Jake Morrison, who often worked late on repairs, would be caught in the disaster and killed along with anyone else unlucky enough to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. The aliens told station manager Lisa Hayes that they would be extending their visit to study the mining operation more closely. She was happy to accommodate such important guests, not knowing they were planning mass murder. Over the next 2 days, the 3 aliens moved carefully through the station. Thexval used his authority to access restricted areas where he could plant small devices that would disable emergency systems. Dr. Zikmoth toured the mining facilities, using his scientific equipment to introduce microscopic flaws into critical components. Sir Yathara spent time in the control room, learning how the station's computer systems worked, so she could manipulate them when the time came. Jake Morrison noticed that the aliens were still on the station, but he did not think much about it. Important people often extended their visits when they found something interesting. He continued his normal routine of maintenance and repairs, unaware that he was being watched and studied by 3 beings who wanted him dead. The aliens had decided to strike on Thursday night during the late shift. Only 12 people would be working in the mining complex at that time, and Jake always stayed late on Thursday to perform weekly maintenance on the power systems. It would be perfect. As Thursday evening approached, Jake was finishing his dinner in the station's small cafeteria when Lisa Hayes sat down across from him. She looked tired and stressed. "Jake, I need you to check the mining equipment tonight," she said. "Some of the readings have been strange lately, and I want to make sure everything is working properly before the next shift starts." Jake nodded and finished his meal. Strange readings usually meant worn parts or calibration problems, nothing he could not handle. He gathered his tools and headed for the mining complex, not knowing he was walking into a trap. In their respective quarters, the 3 alien leaders made final preparations for their plan. Thexval checked his disruptor devices one last time. Dr. Zikmoth reviewed the equipment he had sabotaged to ensure the failures would happen in the right sequence. Sir Yathara prepared to take control of the station's monitoring systems. None of them suspected that they were about to awaken something far more dangerous than a simple spy. They thought they were eliminating a threat to their plans, but they were actually about to unleash humanity's most carefully hidden secret. Jake Morrison walked through the mining complex, checking equipment and making small adjustments. He had no idea that in less than an hour, his carefully constructed peaceful life would explode around him, and the monster he had worked so hard to bury would claw its way back to the surface. The 3 alien leaders activated their devices and waited for Jake Morrison to die. Instead, they were about to learn why humans were the most feared warriors in the galaxy. Jake Morrison wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag as he finished checking the air recycling system on mining station Kepler 7. The machine hummed quietly now, its broken parts replaced and working like new. He had been fixing things on this remote station for 3 years, and every day felt the same. Wake up, eat breakfast, fix whatever was broken, eat dinner, sleep, and repeat. The station sat on the edge of known space, far from Earth and far from the busy trade routes where most humans lived and worked. Only 43 people called Kepler 7 home, and most of them were miners who dug valuable metals from the asteroid field nearby. Jake liked it that way. The quiet life suited him just fine. At 34 years old, Jake looked like any other maintenance worker. He stood average height with brown hair that was starting to show gray at the edges. His hands were rough from years of working with tools and machinery. Most people who met him thought he seemed nice enough but quiet, the kind of man who kept to himself and did his job without complaining. The other workers respected Jake because he could fix anything. When the gravity generator made strange noises, Jake knew how to make it run smooth again. When the water purifier stopped working, Jake had it cleaned and running in an hour. When the mining equipment broke down, which happened often, Jake always found a way to get it working. The station manager, Lisa Hayes, often said that Jake was worth 3 regular maintenance workers. What people did not know was why Jake had come to such a lonely place. He never talked about his life before Kepler 7. When someone asked, he would change the subject or find an excuse to leave. The truth was that Jake sent most of his pay back to Earth every month to help his younger sister Amy pay for medical school. She was the only family he had left, and he wanted her to have a better life than he did. Jake lived in a small room near the engineering section, It had a bed, a desk, a small kitchen, and not much else. He owned few things beyond his work clothes and tools. Sometimes at night he would look out the small window at the stars and remember things he tried hard to forget. Then he would take some pills that helped him sleep without dreams. The Galactic Confederation had been expanding into this part of space for the past year. 3 alien races controlled most of the local government. The Vorthak, who looked like large lizards and loved to fight. The Jektar, who looked like giant insects and were very smart with technology. And the Nixani, who looked almost human but could read minds and do other strange things with their thoughts. Most of the time, the aliens left human settlements alone as long as they followed Confederation rules and paid their taxes. The rules were not too hard to follow and the taxes were not too high, so most humans were happy enough with the arrangement. It was better than fighting a war they could not win. On a Tuesday morning that started like any other, Jake was replacing worn cables in the lower engineering deck when the station's communication system crackled to life. Lisa Hayes's voice echoed through the corridors, telling everyone that important visitors from the Confederation were coming for an inspection. She wanted all non-essential personnel to stay in their quarters and all workers to be on their best behavior. Jake rolled his eyes and kept working. He had no interest in meeting aliens who thought they were better than humans. He planned to stay in the engineering section until they left. The lower decks were usually too noisy and dirty for important visitors anyway. But the universe had other plans for Jake Morrison. Around noon, just as the alien delegation was touring the mining facilities, every light on the station flickered and the artificial gravity started to feel weak and strange. Jake heard the emergency alarm sound and ran to check the main power coupling. What he found made his stomach drop. The primary gravity generator was overheating and about to fail completely. If the gravity went out during the alien inspection, people would be floating around helplessly. Worse, some of the heavy mining equipment could break loose and hurt someone. Jake knew he had to fix it fast, even if it meant dealing with the visitors. He grabbed his emergency toolkit and ran toward the main engineering room. On the way, he passed Lisa Hayes, who was trying to explain to 3 very unhappy-looking aliens why the lights kept dimming. The largest alien had green scales and wore what looked like military armor. The second alien had 4 arms and compound eyes like an insect. The third alien looked almost human except for pale blue skin and eyes that seemed to glow slightly. "Jake?" Lisa called out when she saw him running past with his tools. "Can you fix whatever is wrong?" "Working on it," Jake replied without stopping. He did not look at the aliens, but he could feel them watching him as he disappeared into the engineering section. Jake found the problem quickly. The main power coupling had overheated because someone had not been maintaining it properly. The previous maintenance worker had left 6 months ago, and the new guy was still learning. Jake knew exactly what to do, but it would take time and concentration. As he worked, sweat dripping into his eyes, Jake heard footsteps behind him. He looked up to see the 3 aliens standing in the doorway with Lisa Hayes. They were watching him work with expressions he could not read. "How long will this take?" the blue-skinned alien asked. Her voice sounded like music, but there was something cold about it. 20 minutes if nothing else breaks," Jake answered, not looking up from his work. His hands moved quickly and surely, disconnecting damaged components and installing new ones. The green-scaled alien stepped closer. "You seem very skilled for a simple maintenance worker." Jake shrugged and kept working. "Been doing this for a long time." He finished the repair in 18 minutes. The light stopped flickering and the gravity returned to normal strength. Jake packed up his tools and headed for the door, hoping to escape before the aliens asked more questions. "Wait," the insect-like alien said. "What is your name?" "Jake Morrison," he replied, still not meeting their eyes. "Jake Morrison," the alien repeated slowly. "We will remember that name." As Jake walked away, he felt their eyes following him. Something about the way they looked at him made him nervous, like they were trying to solve a puzzle. He decided to stay in the lower engineering decks until they left the station, but the aliens were already making plans, and Jake Morrison's quiet life was about to end forever. Jake Morrison stood in the maintenance tunnel beneath the mining complex and let the memories flood back. 4 years of careful mental conditioning shattered like glass as his true identity reasserted itself. He was not Jake Morrison, the maintenance worker. He was Lieutenant Colonel Jake Morrison, former commander of Project Cerberus, Earth's most classified military program. The genetic modifications that had been dormant in his system activated with painful intensity. His already enhanced reflexes sharpened to superhuman levels. His modified muscle fibers contracted and expanded, increasing his strength to twice normal human capacity. Neural implants that had been offline for years came back to life, flooding his consciousness with tactical data and combat protocols. Most importantly, the psychological conditioning that had made him humanity's perfect weapon reasserted itself. The part of his mind that felt guilt, hesitation, or mercy locked itself away. What remained was a creature designed for one purpose: killing enemies of humanity with maximum efficiency. Jake closed his eyes and accessed the station's maintenance database through his neural implants. The aliens thought they were hidden, but Jake could track them through the station's power grid, life support systems, and communication networks. Dr. Zikmoth was in the laboratory section, probably monitoring the situation through surveillance equipment. Sirithara was in the communication center, maintaining the jamming field. Commander Thexval was moving through the station with a squad of Vorthak soldiers, heading for the mining complex. They were hunting him. Time to show them what it felt like to be prey. Jake started with the easiest target. He made his way through maintenance shafts to the laboratory section, where Dr. Zikmoth was coordinating the attack. The Zektar scientist never heard him coming. Jake dropped from a ceiling vent directly behind the alien, moving with liquid silence that his enhanced biology made possible. Dr. Zikmoth had just enough time to register that something was wrong before Jake's hands found the nerve clusters in his neck. The insectoid alien collapsed, paralyzed but still conscious. Jake wanted him to understand what was happening. "You made a mistake," Jake said quietly as he began dismantling the alien's surveillance equipment. "You killed innocent people to get to me. Now you get to see what Project Cerberus created." Dr. Zikmoth tried to speak, but his vocal cords would not respond. Jake methodically destroyed every piece of monitoring equipment in the laboratory, cutting off the alien's ability to track his movements. Then he turned his attention to the scientist. "Your species thinks you are superior to humans because you have better technology," Jake continued as he examined the alien's equipment. "But technology is just tools. What matters is who is using them." Jake used the alien's own medical scanner to identify his weak points, then applied pressure to specific nerve clusters that caused excruciating pain without permanent damage. He wanted information about their operation and their plans. Under interrogation, Dr. Zikmoth revealed everything. The 3 alien leaders had planned to eliminate Jake because they suspected he was a spy. They had killed 12 innocent miners as cover for their assassination attempt. Worse, this was not their first such operation. They had been quietly eliminating humans they considered threats throughout this sector of space. When Jake finished extracting information, he ended the alien's life with clinical efficiency. Dr. Zikmoth died knowing that he had awakened something far more dangerous than anything in his nightmares. Jake's next target was Sir Yuthara in the communication center. The psychic alien was maintaining the jamming field that prevented the station from calling for help. She was also the most dangerous of the 3 because her mental abilities could potentially penetrate his conditioning. Jake approached the communication center through the air ducts, using routes that the station's original designers had never intended for human access. His modified body could fit through spaces that would trap a normal person, and his enhanced balance let him move silently through areas where one wrong step would mean a fatal fall. Sir Yuthara sensed him coming. Her psychic abilities detected his presence the moment he entered the communication center, but she was not prepared for what she found when she tried to probe his mind. The mental barriers that had protected Jake Morrison, the maintenance worker, were gone. In their place was something that had been designed specifically to resist psychic intrusion. When Yuthara tried to read his thoughts, she encountered a mental fortress built from years of conditioning and enhanced by technology she did not understand. Worse, the fortress fought back. Psychic feedback from Jake's enhanced mind sent waves of pain through the alien's consciousness. She staggered backward, her blue skin turning pale as blood ran from her nose. "Impossible," she whispered. "No human mind can do this." "You are right," Jake replied as he stepped into the light. "No human mind can, but I am not entirely human anymore." Jake moved toward her with predatory grace, and Yuthara tried desperately to use her psychic abilities to stop him. She attempted to fill his mind with fear, but encountered emotional conditioning that made him immune to such manipulation. She tried to confuse him with false sensory input, but his neural implants filtered out the psychic interference. Finally, in desperation, she tried to shut down his brain functions directly. The psychic attack that should have killed him instantly met defensive systems that had been specifically designed to counter such abilities. The feedback nearly killed her instead. Jake reached the alien while she was still reeling from the psychic backlash. His hands found her throat, and he applied pressure to her carotid arteries with precisely calculated force. She lost consciousness in seconds and died shortly after. With the jamming field down, Jake accessed the communication system and sent a coded message toward Earth. The signal would take weeks to reach its destination, but it would alert his former handlers that Project Cerberus had been compromised and was active again. The final target was the most dangerous. Commander Thexval was a trained warrior leading a squad of 6 Vorthak soldiers in full combat armor. They were currently searching the mining complex for Jake, using military tactics and advanced weapons. Jake studied their movement patterns through the station's sensor network. The Vorthak were good soldiers, but they were hunting in an environment that favored the defender. Jake knew every corridor, every maintenance shaft, every hidden passage in the mining complex. More importantly, he had advantages they could not imagine. Jake began stalking the alien soldiers with patience that came from years of training. He picked off the first soldier in a side tunnel, using a maintenance tool as a weapon to penetrate the alien's armor at its weakest point. The soldier died silently, his body hidden where the others would not find it immediately. The second soldier died when Jake rigged a mining charge to explode as the alien passed a specific point. The shaped charge punched through the soldier's armor like it was made of paper. By the time Commander Thexval realized his soldiers were being hunted, Jake had eliminated 4 of the 6. The remaining Vorthak warriors clustered together for protection, but this only made them easier targets for Jake's enhanced tactical thinking. Jake used the mining complex's own systems against them. He vented atmosphere from sections they needed to pass through, forcing them to use oxygen supplies that could be tracked. He manipulated the artificial gravity to disorient them at crucial moments. He turned the lights off and fought them in darkness that his enhanced vision could penetrate perfectly. The 5th soldier died when Jake dropped a piece of heavy machinery on him from above. The final soldier besides Thexval was killed in hand-to-hand combat that demonstrated just how much stronger and faster Jake had become. Commander Thexval found himself alone in the mining complex with a creature that had systematically destroyed his entire squad. The proud Vorthak warrior began to understand that he was not the hunter in this situation. He was prey. "Come out, human," Thexval called, his voice echoing through the empty corridors. "Face me with honor." Jake's response came from the station's communication system, his voice carrying through every speaker in the complex. "Honor?" Jake's laugh was cold and entirely without humor. "You killed innocent people to get to me. You murdered miners who never hurt anyone. There is no honor here, only justice." The lights in the mining complex went out, leaving Commander Thexval alone in the dark with humanity's most perfect killer. When the lights came back on an hour later, Lisa Hayes found the Vorthak commander's body in the main processing center. He had died fighting, but it had not been enough to save him. Jake Morrison stood over the alien's corpse, his clothes torn and bloody, but his eyes completely calm. The monster that had killed 3 alien leaders and their soldiers was already retreating back into the depths of his mind, replaced once again by the quiet maintenance worker Lisa knew. But she could see in his eyes that something fundamental had changed. The man who had lived peacefully on Kepler-7 for 3 years was gone forever. In his place stood someone far more dangerous, someone who had tasted blood again and remembered what he truly was. The galaxy would never be safe from humanity, as long as creatures like Jake Morrison walked among the stars. Lisa Hayes stared at Jake Morrison as he stood over the body of Commander Thexval. The man she had known for 3 years was gone, replaced by someone who radiated controlled violence like heat from a forge. The other survivors huddled behind her, afraid to approach the person who had saved their lives, but terrified of what they had witnessed. "Jake," Lisa said carefully, her voice barely above a whisper. "What are you?" Jake looked at her with eyes that seemed much older than his 34 years. The genetic modifications in his system were already beginning to shut down again, returning him to something closer to normal human baseline. But the memories and training that had resurfaced would never sleep again. "My real name is Lieutenant Colonel Jake Morrison," he said quietly. "I was the commanding officer of Project Cerberus, Earth's enhanced soldier program. I came here to get away from that life, but it found me anyway." Dan Rogers, one of the miners Jake had rescued, stepped forward despite his fear. "Enhanced soldiers? Like in the movies?" Jake almost smiled at the question. "Nothing like the movies. We were designed to be weapons against alien threats that normal humans could not handle. Genetic modifications for strength and speed, neural implants for tactical awareness, psychological conditioning to eliminate hesitation and fear." "How many of you are there?" Lisa asked. "Were," Jake corrected. "Project Cerberus was disbanded 4 years ago. Most of the soldiers were killed in action or died during the decommissioning process. The genetic modifications were not designed for long-term stability. I am one of the few survivors." As Jake spoke, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Lisa ran to the communication console and found messages flooding in from Confederation ships in the system. The deaths of 3 high-ranking alien officials had triggered an immediate military response. "Jake, we have problems," Lisa announced. "Confederation fleet units are demanding explanations. They want to board the station and investigate." Jake nodded calmly as if he had expected this development. "How long until they arrive?" "First ships will be here in 6 hours. The main fleet will arrive in 12 hours. Jake began moving through the mining complex, gathering equipment and supplies with practiced efficiency. His movements had purpose that spoke of careful planning and extensive experience with emergency situations. "Lisa, I need you to evacuate all civilians to the emergency pods," Jake said as he worked. "Make sure they understand that they are witnesses to an alien attack on human civilians, nothing more. Do not mention Project Cerberus or my real identity." "What about you?" she asked. "I will not be staying." Over the next 4 hours, Jake prepared for departure while Lisa organized the evacuation. The surviving miners were loaded into emergency pods with enough supplies to reach the nearest human outpost. Jake made sure their stories were consistent. Alien officials had sabotaged the mining complex for unknown reasons, and a maintenance worker named Jake Morrison had died helping with rescue operations. As the evacuation proceeded, Jake accessed the station's computer systems one final time. He downloaded critical data about Confederation military movements in this sector and purged all records that might lead investigators to the truth about Project Cerberus. But while Jake worked, another problem was approaching. Earth's government had received his coded transmission, and they were sending their own ships to investigate. A black operations team was already en route with orders to retrieve or eliminate Jake before he could compromise other classified programs. Lisa found Jake in the main hangar as he prepared to steal one of the alien ships. The Vorthak vessel was small but fast, with enough range to reach the outer rim where Jake could disappear again. "You saved our lives," Lisa said. "Where will you go?" Jake finished loading supplies into the alien ship before answering. "Somewhere the Confederation cannot follow. There are places beyond their borders where humans like me can still be useful." "Humans like you?" Jake turned to face her, and Lisa saw something in his expression that made her step back. For just a moment, the monster that had killed 9 alien soldiers looked out through his eyes. "The galaxy is not as peaceful as Earth's government pretends," Jake said. "There are threats out there that normal humans cannot handle. Pirates with alien technology, rogue military units, slavers who target human colonies. Someone has to deal with them. And that someone is you? Me and others like me." Project Cerberus created more than just soldiers. It created guardians for humanity's expansion into hostile space. Jake finished his preparations and activated the alien ship's systems. The vessel hummed to life, its engines warming up for departure. But before he could leave, the station's sensors detected incoming ships. Confederation fleet arriving early. Lisa announced from the control room. 6 heavy cruisers and a battleship. Jake checked his own sensors and cursed quietly. The alien ships were moving too fast for his stolen vessel to outrun. He would have to fight his way clear, and that would mean revealing capabilities that Earth wanted to keep secret. "New contacts," Lisa called out. "Human ships approaching from the opposite direction. They are broadcasting military authorization codes." Jake's expression darkened as he recognized the ship configurations. Earth's Black Operations Division had arrived to clean up the situation. They would eliminate him and any witnesses to prevent Project Cerberus from being exposed. "Lisa, get to the emergency pods now," Jake ordered. "Do not wait for the rescue ships. Something bad is about to happen." But before Lisa could respond, both fleets opened fire on each other. The space around Kepler-7 erupted into a battle between human and alien warships. With the mining station caught in the middle, Jake launched his stolen ship into the chaos, using the battle as cover for his escape. Alien plasma beams and human missiles filled the space around him as he flew through the combat zone with inhuman precision. His enhanced reflexes and tactical implants let him navigate the battlefield like he was dancing through raindrops. Behind him, Kepler-7 was being evacuated by both sides as the battle intensified. Lisa and the surviving miners were picked up by a neutral cargo vessel that happened to be in the area. They would be questioned extensively, but their stories would hold up under investigation. Jake's stolen ship broke clear of the battle and entered hyperspace, disappearing into the vast emptiness between stars. The alien pursuit ships could not follow his course, and the human Black Ops team had bigger problems to deal with. As he flew toward the galactic rim, Jake monitored communications from the battle behind him. The official story was already being written. A terrorist attack on a mining station had triggered a diplomatic incident between Earth and the Confederation. The deaths of the alien officials were being blamed on unknown saboteurs. Jake Morrison, the maintenance worker, was officially listed as killed in action during the terrorist attack. Lieutenant Colonel Jake Morrison of Project Cerberus had never existed according to any records. The man flying the stolen alien ship was nobody at all. 3 months later, pirates attacking a human colony on the Rim worlds reported being hunted by a ghost ship that appeared without warning and disappeared just as quickly. The few survivors described a human pilot who fought with impossible skill and showed no mercy to those who threatened innocent people. Similar reports began coming in from across the frontier. Slavers found their operations disrupted by a mysterious figure who freed captives and destroyed their ships. Alien military units conducting illegal raids on human settlements discovered that their advantages in technology meant nothing against an enemy who fought like a force of nature. The story spread through the underworld of the galaxy, becoming legend among criminals and hope among those they preyed upon. They spoke of Morrison's devil, a human who had become something more than human to protect those who could not protect themselves. Jake Morrison had found his purpose again. He could never return to the peaceful life he had built on Kepler-7, but he could use his abilities to guard humanity's expansion into a hostile galaxy. The aliens who had attacked him thinking they were killing a simple maintenance worker had instead awakened humanity's most dangerous guardian. In the depths of space, Jake set course for his next target, a slaver operation that had been capturing human colonists for sale in alien markets. The monsters who profited from human suffering were about to learn what happened when they attracted the attention of Earth's hidden protector. The galaxy had seen what humanity could become when pushed too far. Now it would learn to fear the consequences of threatening innocent human lives. Jake Morrison was coming, and he would show no mercy to those who had none themselves. The man they had tried to kill was gone forever, but the monster they had created would hunt them to the ends of the galaxy. The first explosion shook the mining complex at exactly 11:47 p.m. Jake Morrison was checking pressure readings in the main processing plant when the blast knocked him to his knees. Emergency lights bathed everything in red as alarms began screaming throughout the facility. Jake's first thought was that someone had made a terrible mistake with the blasting charges. The miners used controlled explosions to break up asteroids, but those were supposed to happen far from the station. This explosion had come from inside the complex itself. He ran toward the source of the blast, his maintenance training telling him to find the problem and fix it. But as he moved through the corridors, more explosions echoed from different parts of the facility. Jake stopped running and started thinking. 3 separate explosions in different sections was not an accident. Someone was attacking the station. In the control room, Lisa Hayes was trying to understand what was happening. Her monitors showed fires breaking out in multiple locations, pressure drops in several mining tunnels, and worst of all, she was getting distress signals from trapped miners. 12 people had been working the night shift, and now she could not reach most of them. "Emergency response teams to mining complex," she announced over the station's communication system. "We have multiple explosions and people trapped in the tunnels." But when she tried to call for help from the Confederation ships still docked at the station, she found that her communications were being jammed. Someone was blocking her signals, making sure no outside help could reach them. Jake heard Lisa's announcement as he reached the first collapsed tunnel. Through the debris, he could hear voices calling for help. At least 4 miners were trapped behind tons of rock and twisted metal. The normal rescue procedure would take hours, time the trapped men might not have. Something cold and calculating stirred in the back of Jake's mind as he studied the collapse. His eyes began moving differently, scanning the debris not like a maintenance worker but like someone trained to assess tactical situations. Without thinking about it, he was cataloging structural weak points and calculating the most efficient way to clear the passage. Jake grabbed a cutting torch and began working on the debris, but instead of following standard safety procedures, he moved with a speed and precision that would have surprised anyone watching. His hands seemed to know exactly where to cut, and his body moved with an economy of motion that spoke of extensive training. It took him 23 minutes to cut through enough debris to reach the trapped miners. By the time he pulled the last man to safety, Jake was covered in sweat and breathing hard, but there was something different about his expression. The quiet maintenance worker was gone, replaced by someone with cold, focused eyes that missed nothing. "Jake, thank God," gasped Dan Rogers, one of the rescued miners. "I thought we were going to die in there." "Where are the others?" Jake asked. His voice was different too, harder and more commanding. "Peterson and his crew were working Tunnel 7 when it collapsed," Dan replied. "Martinez and Wilson were in the processing center near the second explosion." Jake nodded and started moving toward Tunnel 7. As he ran, he passed more signs of sabotage. The explosions had been too precise, too well-timed to be accidents. Someone had planned this attack carefully, and they were still carrying it out. At Tunnel 7, Jake found the collapse was much worse. The entire entrance had been sealed by debris, and the emergency air system had been damaged. The 3 miners trapped inside had maybe an hour of air left, and the standard rescue equipment could not reach them in time. Jake stared at the collapsed tunnel for 10 seconds, his mind working through possibilities. Then he did something that would have shocked anyone who knew him. He began moving through the mining complex like he owned it, gathering equipment and materials with the confidence of someone who had done this many times before. He rigged a shaped charge using mining explosives, calculating the exact amount needed to blast through the debris without causing further collapse. His hands moved with practiced skill as he set the charges and ran the detonation wires. This was not something a maintenance worker should know how to do. The controlled explosion cleared the tunnel entrance perfectly. Jake was through the smoke and debris before it settled, reaching the trapped miners and leading them to safety. But as he worked, part of his mind was analyzing the attack pattern and reaching disturbing conclusions. The explosions had been designed to trap people, not kill them immediately. Someone wanted the miners to suffer before they died. The jamming of communications was meant to prevent outside help from arriving. This was not random terrorism or an industrial accident. This was a carefully planned execution disguised as a disaster. Jake was helping the third group of trapped miners when he heard something that made his blood run cold. As he worked to clear debris from Tunnel 3, his enhanced hearing picked up a faint radio transmission from somewhere in the complex. "Target is still active," a voice said in the Vorthak language. "Recommend proceeding to Phase 2. Jake's mind went completely still for a moment as the implications hit him. The aliens were behind the attack, and he was their target. They had killed innocent people just to get to him. The careful mental barriers he had built over 4 years of peaceful living began to crack as rage flooded through him. But it was not normal human anger that filled Jake Morrison. It was something colder and infinitely more dangerous. Memories he had spent years suppressing began forcing their way to the surface. Training protocols activated themselves in his mind. Chemical changes began occurring in his modified biology as dormant systems came online. Jake Morrison, the maintenance worker, was disappearing. Something else was taking his place. He finished rescuing the miners in Tunnel 3, but his movements had changed completely. He no longer looked like a man doing maintenance work. He moved like a predator stalking prey, his eyes constantly scanning for threats and his body positioning itself for maximum tactical advantage. Lisa Hayes noticed the change when Jake brought the rescued miners to the medical bay. The quiet man she had worked with for 3 years was gone. In his place stood someone who radiated barely controlled violence. "Jake, are you all right?" she asked, concerned by the look in his eyes. "How many people were on the night shift?" Jake asked without answering her question. 12 total. You've rescued 9 so far. Where are the other 3? Martinez and Wilson were last seen near the main processing center. Clark was working alone in Tunnel 12. Jake nodded and started to leave, then stopped and looked back at Lisa. When he spoke, his voice carried an authority that made her step back involuntarily. "Lock down the station, seal all airlocks, and put everyone in the central habitat area. Do not let anyone leave or enter until I come back." "Jake, what's going on? How do you know?" "Do it now," Jake interrupted. "And stay away from the aliens. They are not what they seem." Before Lisa could ask more questions, Jake was gone, moving through the station with purpose that had nothing to do with rescue operations. He was hunting now, and his prey had made the fatal mistake of threatening innocent people to get to him. In their respective ships, the 3 alien leaders were monitoring the situation and growing concerned. Their plan had been to eliminate Jake Morrison in what appeared to be an industrial accident. Instead, he was systematically rescuing everyone and showing capabilities that no simple maintenance worker should possess. "The target is not behaving as predicted," Dr. Zickmoth reported to the others. "His rescue operations show tactical knowledge and physical capabilities beyond normal human parameters." Commander Thexfall growled his agreement. "We should have killed him directly. This subterfuge has failed." Seer-Eye Thara tried once again to probe Jake's mind as he moved through the station. What she found terrified her. The mental barriers were still there, but behind them she sensed something awakening, something that felt ancient and hungry and completely without mercy. "We have made a terrible mistake," she whispered to her fellow conspirators. "This human is not what we thought. We should flee while we still can." But it was too late for retreat. Jake Morrison had heard their radio transmissions and identified their ship signatures. The man they had tried to kill was gone forever, and the monster they had awakened was coming for them. The last thing Jake Morrison, the maintenance worker, had done was save the lives of innocent people. The first thing the monster would do was make sure the aliens paid for threatening them.